The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, wrapped in cream-colored silk paper with gold embossing. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. My sister Emma's wedding invitation. The same invitation that had been plastered all over social media for weeks, with Emma proudly declaring it would be the society event of the year. I stood in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hand, staring at the envelope. Part of me wanted to throw it straight in the trash. But curiosity won out. Carefully I opened it, pulling out the elaborate card inside. "You are cordially invited," I read aloud, snorting. Below the standard wedding text was a handwritten note in my mother's distinctive script. "James, please arrive 3 hours early. We need to discuss your role." My role. I already knew what that meant, and it had nothing to do with being the bride's brother. The next morning I pulled into the circular driveway of my parents' mansion, the same house where I'd grown up, but hadn't visited in months. Emma's white Range Rover was parked out front beside my mother's Mercedes. Perfect. The whole family was here for whatever discussion they had planned. "You're late," my mother said as soon as I walked in, not bothering with a greeting. She perched on the edge of her favorite armchair, already dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Good morning to you too, Mom," I replied, settling onto the couch. Emma sat beside her, practically vibrating with excitement or anger. With Emma it was always hard to tell. "James," she began, voice dripping with false sweetness, "we need to discuss your participation in my wedding." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought that's what the invitation was for." "Don't be difficult," my mother snapped. "You know what we mean. Given your current situation, we think it's best if you help out in a different capacity." There was my current situation. Family code for refusing to join my father's investment firm, and instead building my own tech startup from scratch. In their eyes, I was the disappointment, the son who had thrown away a guaranteed future to play with computers. "What exactly did you have in mind?" I asked, though I already knew. Emma straightened, her engagement ring catching the light. "We need someone to coordinate with the catering staff. Make sure everything runs smoothly. Since you're so intent on working hands-on jobs, we thought you'd be perfect." The insult was clear. They wanted me to work as staff at my own sister's wedding. "Let me get this straight," I said evenly. "You want me to serve champagne at your wedding instead of attending as your brother?" "Don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "Think of it as helping make your sister's day perfect. God knows you haven't contributed much else to this family lately." That familiar tightness pressed against my chest. They didn't know, because I hadn't told them, that my little computer project had caught the attention of one of the biggest tech companies in the country. I'd been in secret negotiations for months. The acquisition deal was worth more than my father's entire yearly profit. "And if I refuse?" asked curious. Emma's sweet facade cracked. "Then don't come at all. I'd rather not have you there than let you embarrass me in front of Jonathan's family. Do you know his father is the CEO of StarTech Industries? I cannot have my failure of a brother sitting at the family table." I almost laughed at the irony. StarTech Industries, the very company about to acquire my startup for 9 figures. "Fine," I said, standing. "I'll help with the catering." Emma's triumphant smile sealed my decision. "Perfect. The uniform will be delivered to your apartment. Don't be late. The wedding starts at 4. We need you there by 1. I could have called my lawyer that night. One phone call and they'd know exactly who they'd relegated to serving champagne. But I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just wanted to see how far they'd take it. 2 weeks blurred by in a rush of negotiations. The acquisition was set to be announced the Monday after Emma's wedding. That detail made me smile every time I thought of it. The day before the wedding, a garment bag arrived at my apartment. White shirt, black pants, black vest. Standard catering uniform. I hung it next to my bespoke suit, a suit worth more than most cars. Running a hand over the fine wool, I made a decision. I'd play their game, but I'd bring the suit anyway. Something told me I'd need it. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the luxury hotel exactly at 1 p.m., my understated Audi blending into a fleet of Bentleys and Ferraris. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could have bought most of those cars outright. Yet here I was, walking toward the service entrance with a catering uniform under my arm. "You must be James," the catering manager said when I walked in. She looked uncomfortable, clearly aware of who I was. Your mother explained the situation. We'll have you on champagne service during the reception. Perfect, I said, offering a reassuring smile. I changed into the uniform and spent the next few hours watching the venue transform into Emma's dream. Crystal chandeliers, walls of flowers worth a small fortune, and champagne that flowed like water. No expense spared. By 3:30, guests began to arrive, Silicon Valley elite mingling with old money. If only they knew one of their servers was worth more than half the room combined. When the ceremony ended, the catering manager clapped her hands. Champagne service, everyone to your sections. I picked up my tray and stepped into the crowd. My mother's face was smug with satisfaction. Emma practically glowed, reveling in her little power play. I was serving my third table when I heard a familiar voice. James? James Chin. I turned, coming face to face with David Marshall, CEO of StarTech Industries and my soon-to-be business partner. What are you doing here? He asked, baffled. His eyes flicked from my uniform to Emma at the bride's table. Realization dawned. You're the bride's brother? The room stilled. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes turned toward us. Emma half rose from her seat, her face draining of color. Is something wrong, David? Jonathan's mother called, concern etched on her face. David ignored her, still staring at me. James. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you the founder of Tech Fusion? The company we're announcing the acquisition of on Monday. The champagne glasses on my tray clinked in the silence that followed. My mother froze, glass halfway to her lips. Emma's complexion turned ashen. I set my tray down carefully, straightened my vest and faced him. Yes, I said clearly. That's correct. Though I wasn't planning on discussing business at my sister's wedding. David let out a booming laugh that shattered the silence. Discuss business? James, you're about to become one of the youngest billionaires in tech. Why on earth are you serving champagne at your sister's wedding? The word billionaire echoed through the ballroom like a thunderclap. I heard my mother's champagne glass shatter against the marble floor. There must be some mistake. Emma cried, rushing over with Jonathan in tow. Her white dress rustled frantically as she moved. James works at some small startup. He's nothing but a small startup? David interrupted, his eyebrows shooting up. Tech Fusion's revolutionary AI platform is about to transform the entire industry. That's why StarTech is acquiring it for $4.2 billion. He turned to Jonathan, his son. Didn't you mention this at home? I've been talking about this deal for months. Jonathan looked as shocked as everyone else. You never mentioned the founder's name, Dad. I had no idea. Well, this is awkward, David said, glancing around at the stunned faces. I assumed everyone knew given that he gestured between Emma and me, clearly uncomfortable. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. It's fine, David, I said smoothly. My family and I just have different views on success. They preferred I help with the catering today. Emma made a strangled sound. James, we didn't know. Clearly, I replied, my voice cool. Now if you'll excuse me, I should get back to my duties. There are still 3 tables that need champagne. The hell you will, David said firmly. He turned to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce James Chin, founder and CEO of Tech Fusion, one of the brightest minds in artificial intelligence, and apparently the bride's brother. Whispers erupted instantly. Phones appeared as people began Googling my name. I caught sight of my mother, sunk into her chair, her face a mask of horror. James. My father spoke for the first time, standing from his chair. Son, why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze. Would it have mattered? 3 years ago when I tried to explain my work, you called it a waste of time. When I needed seed funding, you told me to stop playing with computers and get a real job. When I moved out of the family estate to be closer to my office, you said I was throwing my life away. I straightened my shoulders. So no, I didn't tell you. I didn't tell any of you. Emma stepped forward, mascara smudging as tears spilled. But you let us treat you like what, Emma? I asked coldly. Like staff? Like someone beneath you? Yes, I did. Because I wanted to see if any of you would stand up for me, family fortune or not. Clearly, I got my answer. David cleared his throat. James, there's a spare suit in my car. My driver can fetch it for you. Please, join us at the table. I smiled faintly. Thank you, David. But I actually brought my own. Turning to the catering manager who had been frozen at the edge of the room, I asked, "Would you mind if I took a brief break to change?" She nodded quickly, probably grateful for an excuse to escape the suffocating tension. "Perfect," I said. "I'll be right back." As I walked toward the service area, conversation exploded behind me. My phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. No doubt the story was already spreading across social media like wildfire. In the staff changing room, I removed the polyester catering vest and replaced it with my bespoke charcoal gray suit. The fine wool was a far cry from the uniform. Adjusting my tie, I stared at my reflection, drew a steadying breath and walked back out. The ballroom had shifted. People who had ignored me minutes earlier now rushed to introduce themselves. Venture capitalists who wouldn't have given me a second glance were suddenly eager to discuss investments. I made my way to the family table. My mother sat rigid as stone. My father looked shell-shocked. Emma whispered furiously with Jonathan, her perfect wedding makeup ruined. "James," my mother began, her voice trembling. "Darling, we had no idea." I held up a hand. "Mom, let's not do this now. This is Emma's wedding day. We wouldn't want to make a scene." The irony of my words landed like a hammer. David appeared at my side, offering me a glass of the real champagne, the expensive kind reserved for the most important guests. "Here," he said warmly. "I think you deserve this more than anyone." I accepted it with a nod. "To the happy couple," I said, raising the glass. Emma burst into tears and fled the table, her wedding dress swishing dramatically behind her. Jonathan hesitated, torn between following her and staying to control the situation with his father. "Go," I told him quietly. "She's your wife. She needs you." He gave me a grateful look and hurried after her. "Well," David said, taking the empty seat beside me, "this isn't how I expected to announce our partnership." I laughed softly. "Life has a funny way of working out, doesn't it?" "That it does," he agreed. Then, with curiosity in his tone, "But why didn't you say anything when you realized Jonathan was my son?" I shrugged. "It wasn't relevant to our deal. I wanted StarTech to acquire TechFusion because it was the right move for both companies, not because of family connections." David nodded approvingly. "That's exactly why you're going to thrive in this industry." He leaned in. "Though I have to ask, why go along with all this?" He gestured toward the catering uniforms still hanging in the staff area. "You could have stopped it at any time." I sipped the champagne, considering. "Honestly, I've been asking myself the same thing all day. I guess I needed to know. I needed to see if they'd changed." I glanced around the ballroom at the shifting faces, the calculating smiles, the new eagerness in every handshake. "Money changes how people treat you, David. But it doesn't change who they are." The rest of the reception blurred by in a haze of forced smiles and awkward conversations. Emma eventually returned, her makeup patched but her eyes still red. She spent the remainder of the evening sneaking furious glances my way, her perfect day shattered by the revelation of her brother's success. I stayed at the family table, now seated in a place of honor beside David Marshall, quietly observing the new dynamics. The same relatives who had mocked me for working with computers now tripped over themselves to remind anyone within earshot of our childhood connections. "Remember when James used to fix our computers at family gatherings?" Aunt Sarah gushed. "I always knew he was special." I remembered it differently, her scolding my mother about how I was wasting time, instead of pursuing a real career like my cousins. My mother tried several times to pull me aside, but I deflected each attempt. This wasn't the moment. My father, meanwhile, sat in silence, his empire suddenly looking very small next to mine. Emma kept glancing at me throughout the reception, her eyes darting away as if I were a stranger. Around midnight, when the last of the guests were leaving, she finally approached me directly. She had changed out of her wedding gown into a simple white evening dress. Her shoulders slumped in a way that would have horrified our mother's etiquette teacher. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Please." I nodded and followed her to a quiet corner of the ballroom. For a moment we stood in silence, the weight of years of competition and resentment pressing between us. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered. "God, James, I'm so sorry. What I did, it was cruel." "Yes," I agreed evenly. "It was." She flinched at my bluntness. I thought you were throwing your life away." Everyone said you were just playing with computers, avoiding real responsibility. I thought. She trailed off, looking lost. You thought what, Emma? I asked. That humiliating me at your wedding would somehow fix me? Make me conform to what you and our parents wanted? No. Well, maybe. I don't know anymore. She wrapped her arms around herself. When Mr. Marshall said you were worth billions, I thought I was going to be sick. Not because of the money, but because I realized how horrible we've been to you. All this time you were building something incredible and we were too busy judging you to notice. I studied her face. For the first time in years I saw genuine regret. You know what's ironic? I said. If any of you had bothered to ask about my work, just once, to show genuine interest, I would have told you everything. I wanted to share my success with my family. But you were so convinced I was a failure, you never gave me the chance. I know that now, she said, tears pooling in her eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Emma. Forgiveness isn't something earned in one conversation. It takes time. And more importantly, it takes change, real change. Not just regret because you found out I'm rich. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I understand. But can we at least try to start over? We can try, I agreed, but with conditions. First, no more attempts to control my life or career choices. Second, I want genuine relationships, not ones based on what anyone thinks I should be. And third, I paused until I had her full attention. I want you to really think about why you treated me the way you did. Not just today but for years. Because if we're going to have any kind of relationship moving forward, that has to change. It will, she promised quickly. I'll do better. We all will. Just then Jonathan appeared beside her. The car's ready, he said softly. Then he turned to me. James, I want you to know I had no idea about any of this. If I had known. You would have what? Asked curious. Stopped it? Told Emma and our parents they were wrong? Or just treated me differently because of my bank account? He hesitated, then admitted, I don't know. But I hope I would have done the right thing. Well, I said, I guess we'll never know. But going forward, maybe we can all try to do the right thing, regardless of someone's perceived worth. They both nodded. After a pause, Emma stepped forward and hugged me. It was brief and tentative, nothing like the easy affection we'd shared as children, but it was a start. As they turned to leave, Emma looked back. Will you come to Sunday dinner next week? Mom's already planning it. She wants to make your favorite dessert. I couldn't help but laugh. Of course she is. Tell her I'll think about it. After they left, I found myself alone in the nearly empty ballroom. David Marshall had already departed, but not before scheduling a breakfast meeting to finalize our upcoming announcement. The catering staff was cleaning up. Unlike earlier, they now treated me with the same deference they'd shown the other high-profile guests. My phone buzzed. A message from Grace, my best friend, the only person who'd known about my success all along. How did it go? Did they faint when they found out? I smiled and typed back. No fainting. But Mom did drop her champagne glass. Call you tomorrow with details. As I walked to my car, I thought about everything that had unfolded. The day hadn't gone at all the way my family had planned, but maybe that was for the best. Sometimes it takes a dramatic shake-up to break old patterns and force people to see themselves clearly. The next morning I woke to hundreds of messages and missed calls. I ignored them all, preferring instead to make my usual morning coffee and sit on the balcony as the sun painted the sky in pink and gold. Another buzz, this time from my mother. Would you like to meet for lunch to discuss everything? I took a sip of coffee and thought about Emma's invitation to Sunday dinner. Part of me wanted to decline, to make them earn their forgiveness. But another part remembered the tremble in my mother's hands, the shock on my father's face, the genuine regret in Emma's eyes. Maybe it was worth giving them a chance. Not because of the billions. Not because of the vindication. But because of the family we might have had all along, if only they'd accepted me for who I was. I picked up my phone and typed a reply. Not lunch. But I'll think about Sunday dinner. On one condition, we talk about who we are, not what we're worth. Her response came instantly. Anything you want, sweetheart. We have so much to make up for. I set the phone down and looked back at the sunrise. The truth was, I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built my success without it, proved myself without their support. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. Not the relationship they once tried to force, but something authentic. Something real. As I finished my coffee and prepared for my breakfast meeting with David, I smiled at the irony. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's standing firm in who you are, and letting others realize their mistakes on their own. My phone buzzed once more. A final message from Emma. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you for not completely ruining my wedding when you could have. And I'm sorry we almost ruined it ourselves. I typed back a simple reply. That's what family is supposed to be, isn't it? Even when we mess up. Because in the end it wasn't about money, or success, or even vindication. It was about family, the ones we're born with and the ones we choose to become. And maybe, just maybe, my family would finally choose to become something better.